Welcome to the A&R Worldwide podcast presented by Nuplak with your boy Taylor Jones here as your host. This is the Executives in Discussion podcast where we talk to experienced executives and creatives. We dive into their journeys, ups and downs, the state of the business, where they see it going, and of course gathering some priceless advice and key takeaways. If you're in the music industry or you're looking to get your start in the music biz and want to hear from the very best, this podcast is for you. Today I'm joined by Michael Mancuso, head of A&R at THG Publishing and co-founder and executive vice president of Nuplak. He's a very talented A&R executive and a very good friend of mine. Michael brings over 10 years of industry experience to his multifaceted position at the Hello Group. He's achieved over 10 Billboard #1 chart results, dozens of platinum and golden records, millions of sales, and he's placed music with artists such as NCT Dream, Twice, ITZY, Hypen, and many more. This is Michael Mancuso. Let's get into discussion. Mikey, give me a hug.
TJ.
To start with.
How are you, bro?
I'm good, man, and it's really, really cool to have you sitting here with me.
It's great to be here.
Because what these guys don't know is that not only are you a talented A&R executive at the Hello Group and have been just crushing it over the last couple of years and beyond, really, but the last couple of years have just been magnificent. We've celebrated Billboard #1s and platinum records and millions of sales, and
yes,
this is
sir.
your doing with the roster that you're looking after. And so not only am I incredibly proud of you and your development as an up-and-coming young executive, but you're also my best friend on the planet.
Who knew?
And, you know, and so now sitting here in this capacity is really, really cool because you got an A&R panel coming up shortly.
Yes, sir.
And tell me about the A&R panel, what you're going to be doing there.
So people are going to be coming in and playing their songs for an entire group of music industry executives, which is a very cool thing to be able to say. I'm honored to be a part of it, and I think it's going to be, you know, in the past, people have played songs and they have either moved on to get either record deals from the labels that are in the audience, publishing deals, or just, you know, it's also a meeting of the minds for different people servicing different sectors of the music industry to come together and talk about what feedback matters, and how you know, convey that to writers, because sometimes it's so difficult to put words to emotions or feelings, right? Like, you know, we always joke about those A&Rs that say, hey, can you just make that part cooler? Yeah. Or
something's not right with the bridge.
It just doesn't have enough oomph.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, you know, I think one of the things I'm hoping to bring to the panel and to learn from the panel and other people on it is, you know, how to, they always say a great teacher can say the same thing 1,000 different ways. And so just hearing everyone's different for different specific emotions, or how to ground a song, you know, how to approach artists and writers with different levels of sensitivity, right? Because it's their baby.
It's going to be a really good panel of A&Rs, and hopefully, because you're all seasoned A&R executives, you're all going to be able to maybe pick up some, you know, ideologies of how each
tips and tricks
and
from each other
perform their roles, which is really cool. So talking about your role, let's speak about what you do on a daily basis. And I've seen this, of course. I know directly because we work so closely together. But for everybody listening, let's explain not just what A&R is, but let's explain what A&R is in the capacity of, you know, making music in K-pop specifically.
Got it. I mean, I think that's a really great question, because A&Ring means a million different things. I get asked all the time, you're an A&R, what is that? Artists and relations?
Well, we had Shub's manager on yesterday, who's also great and has become a good friend. And he was saying the way that they approach it, of course he knows what A&R is. He's, you know, very high caliber manager, but he approaches it saying A&R to us is artists and resources. And they perform, you know, and A&R has developed over the years. And actually, in many ways in K-pop, it's artists and repertoire, but when you're working in a music publishing company, it's more like writer-producer repertoire for the artist.
Pretty much, because, you know, the K-pop industry operates very differently to the Western world.
Please explain.
Yeah, 100%. I think, you know, over here, writers and producers have a goal of getting in the room with the artist and creating that project with them hand in hand. And that can still happen in Korea and Japan. but it's nowhere near as common, especially with the major groups. Groups are kind of the pride and joy of the label that they are assigned to. And the label puts a lot of time and effort and energy into training them, into teaching them how to walk, talk, dance, sing multiple languages. They have to pick their style. They're kind of, in some cases, assigned an archetype. And from there, then the group, will go through phases, whether they're the fun group, they're the rock group, they're the punk kids, the new kids on the block, whatever that is, they need to fit into an image that aligns, one, with the label's kind of brand, if you will, and then two, the sector of the market the label's trying to target with that group. But all that to say, the label's really heavily involved in the creation of that group's sound.
To a degree most of the time, the records and the singles are chosen before the artists are even hearing the songs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Especially when they're early in their career. Now, as the groups mature in season, that changes a lot, and we all know that. But in K-pop, A&Ring really is trying to guide your roster to create sounds that you feel are not only relevant in K-pop now, but will be relevant in a year, 2 years, 4 years. And it's also trying to identify when a new group makes a big enough splash to shift the whole industry. Kind of like New Jeans did with bringing in drum and bass in new and creative ways.
And now we've also seen that leak into Indian music with the likes of AP Dylan having drum and bass in the beginning of a rap
drum
song.
And bass is just having a global moment, and everyone's looking for their own iteration of D&B, right? What specific element? Are you just going to take the hi-hat? Are you going to take the snares? Are you going to just use a sidechain synth at a D&B BPM that lets the listener know there's a potential for D&B to come in at some point, and now it's like a fun game. Is it going to happen and when? And, there are, New Jeans did it, and then you had the song In Bloom by Zero Base One, which brought D&B in only in the pre-chorus.
Yeah.
Right? And not even the full D&B breakdown. They just enough for all of a sudden you're realizing you're in a D&B section. But, K-pop is such a melting pot of sounds and genres and textures and colors and emotions, right? And so trying to figure out how to lead creatives that are also based all over the world. K-pop's such a global genre that you'll have songwriters coming out of Sweden, and the US is now really catching on to it. But, a lot of the people lucky enough that we have on our roster have been in this. Some of them are 15-year veterans all the way through to newer players in the game. But, the world is waking up to what K-pop is, what it brings to the table, what the appetite for it is globally. Yeah. You have a lot more people throwing their hat in the ring. And so what we try to do every day when we're listening to songs and guiding the roster is thinking, what has happened in the last month or two that may have shifted the genre? Where are our targets for the sounds that we're anticipating the genre is going to want? What do we think the labels are going to continue to be hungry for? Because in a genre that's moving this quickly these days, you're only as good as your last cut, and the next one is never guaranteed because it keeps getting more and more saturated. So, where some people might be receiving songs in volume and pitching for sync opportunities or Western artists, we are actually trying to create quality moments and pitch much more meaningfully, leaning on direct relationships. So it's a whole different animal. And if you're not in K-pop, it's hard to understand what we actually do and how this kind of whole side of the business works. And it's different.
And there's you articulated it so well, and I literally couldn't have done it better myself, which is great. It's just fantastic to see and to listen to. K-pop is changing, and it is fast moving, and it is shifting. We do these monthly A&R calls, which you lead and educate our roster on what's moving and what's trending and what's current and what's maybe slightly passé in the genre. So let's talk about one of the last cuts that you landed, which actually I guess has just been announced and is coming out very, very shortly. So let's talk about NCT Dream's new single.
Coming out on March 25th. We got Smoothie,
which is written and produced by THG writers and producers, at least 2 out of the 3.
Correct.
And this song was written and produced actually contrarily to the virtual area, which of course is responsible for the volume. But then, and I was speaking with Robin Jensen yesterday, and we also spoke to the quality control that you have in the room when you're actually writing in a camp and you've got 3 or 4 producers and writers together, each quality controlling each other. And a lot of the lead singles for these groups are actually written in the room too. So talk to me about that process, because it was a writing camp in Seoul with some of our writers. You worked on putting that together. So tell me a bit about that and what that trip and that experience was like for you.
Oh man, that is one of my favorite experiences working in music, I will say. From start to bottom, everything just kind of locked in perfectly. And it was one of those things where all the pieces fell into place. And of course, everything, requires a lot of effort and elbow grease, but I wouldn't change a single thing about that whole trip. We reached out to SM. They slotted us in at the very end of November, at the end of 2023. We were thinking to ourselves, it's going to be around the holidays. We're not sure who's going to be available, especially there were a lot of things that were initially concerning, but we knew that the people who were going to be going were going to be excited to be there. And it was,
and we had some heavy hitters too.
We did. We were able to bring over some of the biggest writers and the biggest names.
We had Grammy winners. We had multi-platinum record producers, veterans, some 100%. Up and coming producers and writers.
But it was a mix of, a few, we put the camp together, but it wasn't 100% THG. And I think that's important to note. It was, we had some writers from Warner Chappell, some writers coming in from different European publishers. And then
shout out to the partners.
Shout out to everyone. If there were 9 people at the camp, 5 of them were THG, which is why it was the THG SM camp. Everyone, you can't ever control how people are going to react in the room at a camp. You can do your best to think ahead and try to think of pay attention to what they've done in the past, what you view their strengths to be.
Pair the right sensibilities between people.
You want them at temperaments. I mean, when you're exhausted and jet lagged and burning the candle at both ends, it really shows who you truly are. And I'm even more proud of everyone who was at that camp because they are all incredible. But
including you, by the way, and including Leanne.
Yes,
who
shout out to Leanne.
Is a wonderful A&R,
incredible,
as part of our team, which is just great. So we've explored the world of A&R here. How do you think? What emerging markets are you excited about? I know that we speak very often about India, and India is highly up and coming. You can actually see it here at MUSEXPO with the number of Indian music executives and content executives that are here and representing, which is amazing. We're actually taking a trip out on Sunday this week, which is going to be exciting. So feel free to speak to that if you like, just slightly with what you're excited about and how the genre is evolving. And anything else that just you as a consumer you're really into, because, and I'll let you speak to it, but I know that you're a fantastic vocalist and songwriter yourself, and that all stems from an interest in music and jazz and gospel and all these other areas too. So I'd love for you to speak to, once you speak about the emerging markets and some of the things that you're excited about as far as where A&R is going, then also speak to where you think you instinctually got your talent from that has made you such a great A&R.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I think the markets that have always interested me are the ones that aren't yet fully defined. And for a long time, that was Korea and Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand.
I don't think we can call Korea an emerging market anymore.
We can't say that anymore.
No.
Because it's fully realized. So, India is on track to become the largest streaming market in the world.
Does that make it emerging? I guess not.
Many people could say that is already a realized market. However, the West, in many ways, is just now waking up to it.
Is considered the dominant force, which means it also is considered
it's one of the global
the
tastemakers.
Judge as to what is a emerging genre and what is not.
I think at the end of the day,
right or wrong
we can only speak from our perspective. So I think relative levels of emerging or awakening, the West is now becoming really aware of it, and that's a true fact. And the West is coming off the heels of its K-pop and J-pop awakening, and the way that we felt about getting, let's say, NCT Dream, the lead single, at the camp in Korea, those are feelings that we want to hopefully replicate, not just in the Indian market, but in whatever markets might be coming next that we are not aware of yet.
Yeah.
But that is, if I was going to have to put my finger on, the things that excite me most about any sort of emerging or market that's still finding its footing in a new territory, it's exploring that sound and figuring out which facets of the soundscape will probably work over here, and then trying to figure out how to blend them with everything you already do. Mm-hmm. So the question that we're asking the roster regularly is, what does a Western Indian influence track sound like? What does a Western K-pop, J-pop sound? But then we flip the script. Let's try to get the next global hit that originates out of Korea. What does it sound like mixing Indian flavors into that? Yeah. What does it sound like if you imagine NCT 127 or Dream or Rise or ITZY or Twice with an AP Dylan or a King or a Shub, right?
Which is what we're trying
to do.
Yeah.
So I think that we're beautifully positioned to, and in the right headspace to try and foster these sorts of global collaborations, because I know every year people will always say the world is becoming smaller, like everything is getting more connected, and it is truly happening. And
it's even more accurate, by the way, if you talk about the music business and the folks that run the music business. And once you've gotten to a certain level in our and it's because the music business is huge, but in our small music business, in that circle, once you get to that area, everybody starts to know everyone.
Know each other.
And that also fosters this, or breeds this perfect environment for collaboration and for exciting projects. And even across the course of today, we're meeting people that we've been working with overseas for the longest time who are excited about exploring these cross-genre and cross-cultural activations and opportunities, and it's exciting.
It's crazy you can do so much work with people in other countries and never actually see their face.
Got a 12-hour time difference, and
12.5 hours,
and
or
we're
7
crushing
hours,
on
9
emails.
hours. Yeah, 100%. And I think just having the opportunity to travel more, to immerse yourself in different cultures, and to bring that kind of full circle back to the beginning, to bring these experiences we're having around the globe right back home to THG and to the roster and to the talent that we're looking to sign, and that's on the horizon for us, the more that we can familiarize ourselves with everything happening in music, not just here, but everywhere, and the things that are going to be influencing the West next. I think that's been one of my favorite pieces of being at Hello, is just getting to be a part of the next wave and the next wave, right? Yeah. Because don't get me wrong, of course, we're very active in the current wave and always will be, but there's something we have
to stay ahead of the curve.
Helping to define what comes next.
You have to stay ahead of the curve, and we're known for being a platform and being an influence, a voice of influence in our marketplace, which is why we're doing things like this. And I'm excited to talk about some of these markets very shortly on my keynote. You're going to be speaking about these markets when you're giving feedback and opening producers and writers and their minds up to exploring new soundscapes and new designs that maybe aren't the sounds that they're generally accustomed to from listening to music here. And that's really cool, because once you start to open up your mindset and are agreeable to being a sponge and absorbing these things, you start to diversify your ability to produce differently. Just like with top line writers, when they constantly go back to the same melodies and the same riffs and the same licks that they always do. And only can you develop and enhance and push once you actually are self-aware of that happening. Which is great. I want to talk a little bit about you as well, not just about what you do. You've given us such a fantastic overview of what you do on a daily basis, and clearly are an absolute expert in what you do, which is fantastic. Let's talk about what you do to maintain your level of work-life balance. From practicing wellness to working out to whether you do supplements and all these types of things, because I know you're very much into health. So, it's probably really interesting for someone to see, for a top-level A&R executive, what you're doing in your personal life to also maintain, a clear mindset and, an energy and a willingness and motivation to get up and crush every single day and then feel good within yourself at the same time.
Man, that's a great question. I think I've been fortunate enough to see or know many very high-level CEOs well in my life, either growing up with some of them as family members or befriending, people whose parents are running multinational companies. And the one thing that was instilled in me from a super young age is take care of yourself, period. Like, there's no excuse
Which
to
you're
not take care of
constantly
yourself.
encouraging me to do.
Whether it's getting up and going to the gym, which sounds like a slog, but going for a walk, or meditating, or taking a green supplement or a multivitamin if you're not eating right. Like, these little things have just been like drilled into my brain since I'm a kid. And anytime I could say, oh, I'm too busy, or I don't know, it sounds like a lot. Like, I have a person in my life who's CEO of one of the, the biggest entertainment companies in the world. And they get up every morning and they work out, and then they're on Zoom calls all day and in-person meetings, and they still manage to eat 3 times a day. Yeah. And it just
shit on me a little more.
Not about you. I mean, if that was a mirror, then I'm sorry, but
you're constantly telling me, hey, work out, take the supplement, drink this. You had vitamin C today? Like, what are you doing? You can make time. I'm like, I'm busy, bro. I'm busy. If you see my schedule, you're like, I've seen your schedule, but you can make time.
You can. You have to.
Thank you for the vivid explanation and mirror.
You have to. It's so important, because at the end of the day, you're not going to perform anywhere near your best if you have brain fog, if you're feeling sluggish, if you're crashing in the middle of the day, you have low motivation, low drive to succeed. Like, all these things stem from the very, very basics that are just easy to ignore as you're trying to just kill it, which is, did I sleep?
Yeah.
Have I eaten? Am I giving my body fuel to win?
Yeah.
And, it's a black and white question, and we can tell ourselves, I'm doing enough, but then you're feeling, kind of bad.
Feeling bad, yeah. Well, I would encourage everybody listening into this that if you're struggling with any of those pieces, low energy, low motivation, to just practice wellness more. So I am, a hypocrite in that, and I'm trying to do better myself.
There's no excuse. You can get multivitamins everywhere.
No, there is no excuse, and I'm a firm believer in that too.
Just a little bit of B12, you're set.
I agree with you. But this is great. I've learned a lot from you, which is fantastic, and I've loved hearing you speak, and especially sitting next to you. And I hear you speak in this capacity all the time, but it's really good in a setting like this to just really hone in and showcase just how knowledgeable you are. I'm proud of you.
Thank you,
and I'm looking forward to hanging out later and grabbing some food.
Absolutely. We will.
Thanks for joining, Mikey.
So happy to be here. Thank you, bro.
Make sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow the Spotify page, and stay tuned for the next episode of Executives in Discussion on the A&R Worldwide podcast presented by Nuplak with your host, Taylor Jones. See you next time.